I put my first, I put my first, I put my family first, I put my first.
Good afternoon, my king.
Good afternoon, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. Yourself?
Can't complain. Can't complain.
How did you wake up today on this gloomy Cape Town, like winter? Oh, it's not winter yet, it's autumn, eh? But it feels like winter.
Yeah, no, it feels terrible. It's miserable today.
How was your morning routine?
Good. I had a bit of a different one today. I had like a shoot this morning. So
Okay.
That was cool. I was up at like 4:30.
Ooh, this time in front of the camera, right?
Yeah, it's nice to be nice to have that pivot.
I get you. I'm sure people are also drawn to your interesting look. Like, I can't imagine the conversations you had with the rents about so many like roadmaps of who you are on your body.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. I think that's a conversation they try and skip now.
Oh, for real?
Yeah, I think they get to the point where it's like, you've said don't get more tattoos enough time.
For them. Speaking of your folks and your upbringing, for you to become who you are, obviously, it began somewhat of at home, in a way. Take me back to growing up. What sort of like, music was playing in the house? What sort of like atmosphere were you raised around? And what sort of like gave you that creative like bone to go the path that you find yourself into right now?
So I think in terms of family anyway, things were quite like segregated. So some of my family are kind of more like kind of like the Crossy Park, Strand, Fontaine areas. And then my mother was one of the first, or is like actually one of the first few people in our family to kind of like move more southern suburbs, more kind of like the more kind of affluent areas, more like city ball. So I was kind of exposed to both. And like you're young, you don't really pick up on it as much until kind of like you deal with weird situations with like race and like like a security guard looks at you weird and like okay, it's unfortunate you have to realize through things like that, but that's how I picked up on things. In terms of kind of like music and stuff.
So wait, before we get to the music side, you mentioned Crossy Park and Strand Fontaine.
Correct.
Were those the two areas you grew up in as a youngin before your mom made the affluent transition?
No, so it was crazy. I had both at the same time.
Yeah.
So I never actually had one and then the other. I had like everything simultaneously.
Okay.
So my family were there, and we'd like have like family get-togethers, and then we'd go that side. I'd spend like school holidays in Strand Fontaine, like my aunt's house, and back and forth. So it was crazy because like here you are like feeling super at home and like welcome by like people in like kind of more colored areas. And then like you come this side, and then like you get like a side eye, or it's an unfortunate way to kind of like be exposed to the differences in cultures. And
you were aware of those like
from an early age.
From
absolutely.
early age,
I don't think you cannot be as a person of color. Luckily, like I'm kind of more like light skinned,
For
so
sure.
you deal with it like on a lesser scale.
For sure.
But I mean, you still deal with things.
I get you. So with the music, bro, like what music and sounds were playing at those family gatherings of your earliest memories, bro?
I think it's crazy you say this because like I'm trying to think back now and like I don't even I can't actually place it. Like I can't think of something specific, but I think it was more kind of like that that OG kind of like 90s R&B soul energy, and I think like I do resonate quite well with that. But in terms of like what I think about and what I enjoy a lot, I think more of kind of like my early teens, and I was exposed to like a lot of my cousin's music, and she really loved like her hip hop. She loved her like R&B, her house. She used to go to like I think Deluxe. That was the name of the club. It was
Deluxe in the southern suburbs.
No, it was in town.
Oh, okay.
It was like a deep house kind of venue. And she'd always talk about that. She also went to Bang Bar, which still kind of existed until like pretty recently.
Yeah.
And it's crazy that like this person that was like so peripheral to me and like now so like distant in terms of like my club experience,
crazy
somehow had this impact. And I don't think it was like fully direct, but like sometimes I think back and I'm like the subconscious things
For
do
sure.
more than the conscious
conscious things.
Yeah.
So when you started clubbing, what sort of like areas or places would you find yourself? Where did you go high school? Because I mean, high school also plays a big role, sort of like into like the kind of like vibes you're into.
Yeah, so with high school, I was kind of close to home in Observatory.
Okay.
So I went to St. George's, which is in Mowbray. And that was like, when I started going there, it was more white. But like towards the latter end of my schooling there, it did become a bit more like, quite like noticeably more inclusive. And like, you know, I think throughout that journey there, like hip hop, R&B is something I loved. Yeah. And then with clubbing, when I started doing that, like one of my best friends at the time, still very close with him, he went to a boys' school. So, and I wasn't really like that social at that point in my life. Like I was quite introverted, kept to myself. Also, it's just like I was a bit lost. I hadn't found who I felt comfortable with as myself. So, you know, it was easy to kind of just like, you know, that's my homie, latch onto those plans and like I go with them. And it was unfortunate we would go to like Claremont and things like that, the odd like town experience.
Yeah.
But the music there isn't like something that kind of like, you know, got to me.
Got to you, yeah.
So like that was a period when I was like kind of like drinking and like that was like the vibe, the buzz, you know.
Can you put this in like life years, like 20?
This was like 17 to like 19, 20.
Okay.
Maybe even around then.
For sure.
And like the music you're exposed to, it's not something that I would even dare kind of expose myself to now. You know, it's like kind of weird EDM stuff like that, and you know, it's just like a space you go to because the people you know go to.
Okay, I get you.
And I didn't know anything different at the time.
Yeah.
And then one of my homies, Doomy Scott. I'm sure you met him.
I do know Doomy. Yeah.
So I think like a mutual kind of like was going to this thing called Early Friday. And like we'd been going to these like your parties and all of these things in town because we were kind of like moving away from this Claremont space because we both knew the vibes. That was not us.
Yeah.
So like with these Early Fridays, we'd go to those and those would be cool. You know, you listen to hip hop, you listen to R&B, you listen to like maybe like a house or something. And by chance, I discovered this party. A friend, her name's Jade Nair, and she introduced me to this party called Uppercut, which would happen right after Early Friday. And that was
which year was this?
This was about 2013, 2014. And it was just like this crazy experience where I was like, oh my God, like I love this. This music is great. Everything about it is, you know, this is a space where I belong. And it was great. I went to quite a lot of those, like almost every Friday, because those parties would happen every Friday. I'd be there, and it was amazing.
At this time, are you fascinated about the decks, or is it still something that catches on later?
It was something that I was touching on, but wasn't taking seriously.
Okay.
And you know, it's like you have different priorities.
For sure.
And at that point, I just wanted to have fun. Like
I get you.
I didn't think about it as a business. I didn't think about it as something I would be doing in my future.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's the fun part because like, look at me now.
No, 100%. I mentioned your childhood earlier and like touched on like Crossy Park and Strand Fontaine. I asked those specifically just to ask like from a party perspective, like in those kind of neighborhoods, we obviously have like very big like yard party culture. Yeah. Like, would you say like that those sort of like type of curations of like where we come from are uncandidly like not given as much as recognition because the energy resides there? That's where we get it from. That's the blueprint, the root of where it stems from. Like, do you have any memories of like attending your first like yard party? When I say yard party, I mean I grew up in a very colored setting, so it's always a situation where you're not supposed to be drinking, but it's like it's happening, you know, and the culture that comes with it. I mean, like back then it was probably 4/7 and Lucam era, very like deep house centric DJ Kent, like, you know, DJ Clock too. But like, yeah, I'm rambling right now. But like, do you have any like memories of those moments, bro?
No, because I was actually so removed.
For
so
real?
Like so like my kind of beginning years as like a kid being exposed to that, like those family get-togethers. There's like eventually like the family kind of like we drifted apart somewhat. And then I was obviously just more like observatory side. And it's unfortunate, but like, you know, families, they don't always stay like that forever, you know?
100%.
So then obviously I was pretty much more like city ball area. So I missed those experiences entirely. Like Bang Bar, for example. Heard about those parties were like crazy. Like you hear about them and you know about them, but I never got to go. I was like so removed, like my friendship groups and like those peripheral friendship groups. They didn't really go there. So I was kind of like stuck in that Claremont thing where I didn't know better. And like, I mean, I knew that wasn't for me.
For sure.
But I didn't know what else to do. And I think like growing up and like, obviously things are different now with social media being more prevalent.
For sure.
But then it was like, it's just so frustrating. Like you're stuck in the box and you know you want more, you know you want to go elsewhere, but again you don't know. So I obviously discovered it by chance, but now you get like a sponsored post from like whichever party and you're like, oh shit, that looks like that's
exactly, because
quite interesting.
The information is accessible and it's widespread and it's there and it's in your face, you know.
Exactly. And then it was like hidden. It was almost like gatekept. So I don't know. I like the fact that like things are changing and like
for sure. You know, at what point do you take the deck seriously?
Came kind of later. Hey, like I was just kind of more interested in the music I was listening to and playing. So I didn't take it seriously as a craft at all. Probably like 2017, 2018 was when I like started taking it a lot more seriously. And like even now, I will never claim to be one of the best, and I don't think I'm ever going to be. But I think I want to stay true to what I like and what I listen to. And I obviously just constantly want to improve. And I think that at the basis is very important because, you know, like the whole competition thing, it's like you will never win. There will always be someone better. And I say that in the least negative way, but there will always be someone better.
What's your creative process like? Like, well, how do you find new music? Like, explain to me, what's your responsibility as a DJ?
I mean, obviously, like, you know, new music drops. People want to turn up. And I think that is more in the realm of me. But me as a curator, I have the option of putting in different people in different spheres of music. So what I can't do, someone else can. And I will try and give space within, you know, with what I can.
I get you. So 2016 is when you have your birthday party.
When I had my first Prime.
Your first Prime. Did you intentionally name your birthday party Prime? Where did that Prime thing come from?
It was just it was basically just a cohesive concept that I came up with. But essentially, I didn't want it to be known as my birthday party. Like on my personal socials, I advertised it as such. I was like, I have a party. Homies come through. It's free.
For sure.
Vibes. But I knew that this would also maybe reach like people beyond my people. For sure. So I just decided to come up with a random party name. So I used these like fucking SAVC2 news screenshots, that kind of thing. And like the party started like 6, 7, like, you know, prime time.
Yeah.
So I just like, I had this like cohesive concept and I think it worked. Like I think it was cute, it was niche, nobody was doing anything like that. And I really enjoyed what I was doing, you know. I wasn't happy with how the party went though. Like it went well. People came. It was like a vibe.
Yeah.
But on my way home, I was like, you know, like I could have structured this lineup a bit better. Like I want to maybe do something different. And then, you know, then the second one happened. And then like I literally ended up like throwing like free parties for 8 months.
In the year of 2016.
Yeah, from like 2016 up until just the beginning of like autumn 2017.
2017. And then when do you realize that you have the nick for curation and you actually have a responsibility in the city? Because, I mean, you were amongst many other people who like, you know, throw these significant parties at the famous like waiting room. Like, what's the relationship like with them? Do they necessarily see the vision? And also, you were very creative with your marketing with it, because just like you mentioned, you had the primetime SABC and amongst many other themes like up to date, you know. You've always been considered in that, but like when do you then like make that realization that okay, this can be something special after those 8 months?
Yeah, well, during those I suppose maybe like the 3 to 5 months within those 8 months, the latter end, a lot of people were just like, you know, pushing me to like take it more seriously.
For sure.
like start charging,
For
like,
sure.
you know, like take it seriously.
For sure.
And I don't know, I didn't believe in myself. I held myself back, just not thinking that it would be a thing. I was just like, nah, like this concept needs to be like this. I wanted to create this kind of space. And obviously, you know, having eventually listened to that advice, it became a lot more than what I even envisioned. Because again, I just thought it would be one event, you know, and now I don't even know how many events I've thrown this year alone, you know? So
crazy.
Absolutely. I don't think you can ever, like, I guess the you know, the moral of that kind of a story
For
is just never put
sure.
yourself in a box, never just like, never accept things even within your vision, because things could be so much bigger.
Was having people that was who did you have around you at the time? Because I mean, most of the time, you know, people have these big ideas and like it's always like, you know, they always push to do things themselves and they feel pressured sometimes and sometimes feel demotivated. Like, who was your support structure at the time?
I mean, funny enough, like,
how do you describe what a support structure is to you?
To be honest, I'm still learning what a support structure is, because for the majority of this period, I've done everything myself. Like I do bookings, I do curation, I do social media. You know, like I do everything. And I have like somewhat of a team, but it's not like people who would like willingly take responsibility. It's like people who are involved, but more vaguely than like, you know, like the decision making.
I get you. How do you describe the youth and the kids' energy back then with the energy that's sort of like bubbling up now with the most recent events? Is it the same? Is it similar? What are some of like,
I think there was
from a curatorial point of view, like things that you've changed? I mean, yeah.
I think generally energy in Cape Town was a bit complacent when I started. And I feel like everyone is hungry now. I think I've never felt that energy push me more now. And I think that's good. I love that. Just because I feel like I myself can easily feel complacent. And I think we all can. Like if you're around an environment that speaks to an energy, that energy affects you. And whether that's positive or negative, it will.
For sure. So
I think how things are moving now, I'm hungry. I want everything. And I think everyone wants everything. And there's space for everyone too. But at the same time, we all kind of want to succeed. And we're pushing. And I think that is really important. Yeah.
How's your curatorial like process, bro? Like curating events, like how has COVID repositioned the way you look at events? Before COVID, how do you look at them now? What are some of the challenges that you face, like on a day-to-day, like, you know, trying to put together? Because your events are super consistent. Like, in a span of a month, you'd probably have like four primes, you know?
Like literally 1 a week at the minimum,
1 a week in the minimum. It's become one of the main youth hangout spots in Cape Town nightlife, and that's a big responsibility to carry. Some might ask you why they have this big attachment for waiting room. When are you going to take the next step into maybe taking prime elsewhere? I mean, you have, you know, done Joburg Prime in collaboration with the family Ebu Nandini, or which we'll touch on later. But yeah, how has your event curation changed before COVID, and how has COVID affected you into looking at things different, like right now?
So I think growth and expectation are quite difficult, because at the same time as me wanting to curate, I also have a constantly growing audience and expectation. So it's like you almost have to find a middle ground. And I find that so like difficult, because I was thinking about this earlier today, actually, just in a different context. And it's like, I don't know, like as a creative or as someone who wants to create or give a product, you know, you have your purest idea, and then you have your expectation from the market, and it's like you're constantly fixing a middle ground, and that middle ground never exists. There will never be 50-50.
For sure.
So like sometimes it'll be 70-30 to you, and sometimes the other way around. And I think that's kind of what I'm doing now. I'm just trying to figure out like my market, and also just kind of come to terms with the fact that it seems to be constantly growing. Like it's like 6 years in June this year, like the prime, you know, and I hit like 5K followers the other day. I thought that was like kind of cute.
Wow.
It's like already on 5.2. Like the growth is exponential, and I want to meet this constant like this need for events. So I've kind of like initially when I was doing events, I think I had it a lot more mixed genre, and now sometimes I do feel like I'm playing it a bit too safe in terms of like my genre selections for an event. But it's gotten so crazy that I can now, instead of doing an event where I'll have like I'm a piano, like house, Afro beats, or like R&B and hip hop, I can now have separate events for almost like kind of more complementary genres. And I think that is also something that's so powerful, and like I never would have thought. So now I could even focus on an era. Like I can throw 70s parties. Like I never thought I'd be able to do that. And it's just, I don't know. I think it's a huge compliment that people trust me to do that. And it is a bit of a stressful situation too, because like with that power comes expectations.
Definitely,
and
bro.
There's a lot of people that like they want a specific thing, but they also need to understand that it's just not just them that's coming through to that party, or space or whatever. Because again, like that product is never just for one person, because that's not how the world works.
Exactly. And then with that expectation, and the pure idea that that resides in your heart and in your mind, is also this another important aspect of it, which is like filtering talent, bringing in energy that can showcase these different sounds and mediums of music. How has that been going? Just like from an ecosystem of Cape Town, you bring on like very like youthful energy in the lineups. I could mention a few, but like I don't want to miss out anyone. How's that been going, bro? Like, have you been physically seeing progress from individuals you brought on early on in your events, and like how like now? And how do you measure or merit their progress? Is it a conversation that you openly have with these individuals? And like, okay, maybe go about it this way. Is that open conversation for you as a curator or a promoter? Do that conversation resides there? Is there somewhat sort of, I don't know, I won't say mentorship, because like you also learning, but like we teach each other, but like, yeah.
Exactly. I think it's really difficult. I've noticed. So obviously over the years, I've obviously had like a bunch of acts play, and you see varied levels of crowd participation, and I think that's something that is very important, regardless of whether you're playing an opening set or a closing set. Like understanding of what is required in terms of like a tempo or like a crowd interaction development, because again, as a DJ, you need to play to a crowd,
for sure,
whether a DJ or live performer actually. And like obviously it's a lot harder with a live act. It's like it's not like I'm gonna go play some caterer now. Like it's like no, I have my catalog. But again, I think it's just about reading the room, and I think that's something that's super important. The whole interacting and kind of giving feedback thing, I think that's really difficult, because I've done that once or twice, and I've had like varied levels of reaction to it, and like like it's hard not to take it personally, and I think people do, and like I come from a good place. Like I wouldn't have said that if I didn't want you to improve and do something better when I book you again. But like with this one interaction, it didn't go so well, and I was just like, I don't like. I tried multiple ways of saying the same thing, but it just like the reactions and responses were the same. Whereas like with someone else, I spoke to them and they were like very willing to learn and improve. So it really just, I guess, depends on the person. So I'm still kind of like 50-50 on my idea of like feedback, because it's hard. Like I think a lot of people, especially in like a social media setting, like there's so many things that happen and are said online, and like a lot of negative things. And when someone approaches you with something that's constructive criticism, it's very easy to take it as like a personal attack, when sometimes it is just like out of someone's legitimate concern, or like wanting to help you improve too. Because again, like for me, it sounds selfish, but it is. I want my party to do well, so I want you to do well when you play at my party, and in turn that helps you when you play at other parties as well. It's like a shared system of improvement. Because again, like if you improve, you're not just gonna improve in the space that's for me. You're going to improve whatever space you are exposed to, And I think, I don't know, I think it's just, a sensitivity that people need to overcome, and I think it's just it's a part of character development, and like, you know, we're all different.
So I want to talk about something that's very important that I feel like we don't speak about a lot. How do we open the conversation of responsible drug use? I mean, you know, it's something that resides, you know, in our youth, in these spaces of nightlife and clubbing and partying. I just, like, it's so sad that, like, it took so much from us, and it's still continuously taking. I'm not coming from a perspective of, oh, how does Prime initiate responsible drug use, like tips on how to have a safe LSD trip, but like I think conversations like these are important. And when I speak of drugs, I include alcohol too, because it's a substance at the end of the day. And yeah, man, what's the ecosystem of drug culture in Cape Town, and how is that sort of like pushed you to I don't know, yeah, bro, the thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's like, it's so difficult to because we've all been exposed to it, and
Yeah.
you know, we all see people outside just going a little too hard, and yeah, I don't think enough has been said. Like, it's so hard to like see someone in the club, a stranger, for example, kind of like tripping over themselves and being like, hey, should maybe like take it a bit more easy. And it's also so crazy because, like, you know, there's like such a huge there's like, you know, GBV is like a constant issue, and like you see people look at things differently to you because you're like, oh, I'm worried about them, and you see someone else like, oh, kind of like with weird intentions. And I think it's just so crazy to look at the differences. But to go back on your topic, and it's like, where do you start? Like, I look at examples of Europe, where they literally have like drug testing, like almost units at like bigger events and stuff, like festivals actually. And I think that's so cool. I haven't heard of any example of that here in Cape Town, Joburg. I think it's such a taboo subject. Like, like people don't want to talk about it. I mean, for me personally, I kind of like stay away from that just because like events is my workspace. So like even to drink, it's kind of like something I try and tiptoe around. But you know, I'm not gonna like be weird about someone for doing that. I mean, it's like a club experience. It's nightlife. You know, you do you safely, hopefully. But yeah, I don't even know where to start. Like I think in my head, yeah, I guess the smaller events would be a cool way to do that. But I think also it's like, where does the budget come from? Is government even interested in this? Because like often it doesn't seem like that at all. And then if I look at the bigger festivals, for example, I'm like, damn, they also don't care. Like, dude, I've never heard of an example like that. And like, especially with festivals where there's bigger budgets, bigger crowds, and more room for error with drug use. Again, it's just something that's just kind of like swept aside and not really discussed. And I think it's something that should definitely be brought up. I just, one of those things where I don't know where to start. But again, I think like funding, government aid would be amazing. I think it's also just one of those things that should be discussed in school, like responsible drug use. And even like alcohol, like you're saying, alcohol is something that's so normalized, but that it has the power to ruin families. And we don't talk about it, you know, just like, it's like, okay, cool, like another black label. Cool. And I think it's easy to, you know, to have a good time, have your fun, but not everyone's doing that. Like some people are using it as like crutches, coping mechanisms. And that's also like something else. Like, you know, like maybe you just need to have like a chat with a homie, just like see how you're doing. We also don't talk about therapy enough, you know, like therapy with like men and like suicide rates. There's just so many like issues and room for improvement in our society, and it's just like, where does it start? Is it just with that, like that single conversation with a friend, and you just kind of like hope that like that kind of movement and positive intention does more, which it does and it will, but I think that also isn't enough. And I think there needs to be like full-on movements, like social media accounts, like government funding into kind of like institutions where they make sure that like information is like put out there, like for, you know, not even just for like kind of like mental health and like suicide rates, but like again, like with like with drug use, like because who's saying anything about it? No one. And then
because if you tell kids don't do drugs, they're gonna do it anyway, bro.
Exactly. Because again, like it's this unknown, this exciting thing that you've heard about forever. You want to try it. Like it's glamorized in like social media and film and like in everything. So why would someone not want to try? But yeah, again, it's something that I think needs a lot of rethinking from educational institutions, from government institutions, and I think clubs would be amazing to implement something like this in clubs, especially festivals, because again, people are taking advantage of people's lack of knowledge. Because again, it's like, oh, someone in the club is selling weed or selling whatever drug they're looking for, it's like, okay, cool, it's accessible, I'm gonna get it. But does that mean that it's good? Does that mean it's safe? Highly likely or highly unlikely, actually, because again, it's like someone preying on like a lack of knowledge. So I mean, what can you do?
No, I get you 100%, bro, because it is becoming like a growing concern, we can't be naive to think that like these kids don't, seek to go to these pockets of events to escape or have this channel or trip of fun, and it can become really dangerous, like you mentioned, GBV, and I mean, like, drug abuse and substance abuse, alcohol abuse is one of the gateways, to all of these, ills that we find in like the society we live in now. So I think a government contribution could definitely lead us into a progressive step into finding ways where we can initiate spaces where we can have, I won't say responsible recreational drug abuse, but definitely people being aware of the dangers that it comes with, and also in decreasing the preying of like on the people that don't have the information and insight on it, because some social media glamorize drug abuse and substance abuse, and it's just the reality of it all. And there should come a time where Prime is also like, making these ills aware, to the youth, because as much as we're having a good time, we should definitely have it responsibly, you know what I mean? And not to say, like you mentioned earlier, that you would treat people weird just because they, dabble and, doing this, like each to their own. But, in hindsight, as a curator, you don't want to attach your curation or your pure idea into a gateway that is a instrument of, darkness, you know what I mean? And, it's an ongoing conversation that should definitely be open to, the government, because, I mean, they're the biggest, chain into this that has the infrastructure to really, implement all of these safety measures. And it begins with varsity, because, I mean, for all of us, we start partying really first year out of high school, and it comes at you at a rush. You're exposed to so many different people, so many different events, clubs, social spaces, and it's really, really important that we, have somewhat safety measures. Like you mentioned, with the suicide rate amongst us men of South Africa, it's a growing concern, and it's not false that we are a very sad population, a very closed off population, a very we've dealt with so many traumas that we don't even openly chat about, We just find ourselves existing in spaces, and these toxicness of our behavior just shows through how we carry ourselves, and the reality of where we find ourselves. But on a lighter note, Prime has grown immensely since, I think, the emergence of the bubble that's been happening here in Cape Town sort of brought attention to spaces like Johannesburg, and the constant back and forth and mergence of the two has been sort of something that has always been in a pipeline, but it just needed a conviction like Ebum Nandini and Prime to really take it to the front. What are your thoughts on the culture that resides in Joburg and the culture that resides in Cape Town in the nightlife for youth point of view, and why is that merge important to bring together? Because Ebum Nandini and Prime sort of made that tie.
Yeah,
easy.
No one ever really did that.
No one ever really did that before. Please take me through that, bro.
So, I mean, So Mshindi, one of the founders of Ebumlandini, he used to be based here with Ayema as well, but I was more kind of acquainted with like Mshindi. And
Steve Pop, by the way, for those who don't know.
Yeah, Stiff Pop.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the homies.
That's the homies.
And yeah, so I actually don't even remember how the conversation in terms of like a collaboration event came about, but it did, and I'm thankful it did. And yeah, it's just we started. I think our first event we had like D Koala.
Crazy.
It was really cool. And like from then we've like obviously made a lot of progress since. And so I think the importance of what we're both doing, and especially with the collabs, is that I think there are a lot of similarities between the Cape Town and Joburg crowds. Especially
Which are?
If you look at the fact that like a lot of people in Cape Town are from Joburg too, and like vice versa, like we exchange people like nothing. Like people from Joburg come here and they study. People from Cape Town, they study here, or they've studied and they end up getting a job in Joburg. And it's like, you know, it's so mad how like, you know, it feels like the way people in Cape Town move from like Rondebosch to like the CBD is the way that people like move between cities.
Yeah.
And I think we definitely are starting to do something really cool, but again, it's a start. I don't think we've done enough.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot more to do.
For sure.
But again, it's more the intention. And again, we've got a long future ahead of ourselves. I think we want to do a lot. And these like kind of boiler room moments are just kind of like indications of our intention.
How was Boiler Room Joburg Prime and Brandini? Take me through the feeling. Take me through the butterflies when you woke up. Actually, not even when you woke up, but when you were on that flight. You were telling me about the flight moment briefly. The first time we met, actually. You were telling me about like the feeling, but like explain to the audience like how was that moment for you, that realization? What were the conversations you were having with yourselves on that plane?
It was one of the craziest and best days of my life, actually. Like just like the night before, I was booking flights and accommodation, and then like on the day I got a flight that I thought I was gonna be late for, made it. You know, did all the things, landed, had a bite, got my Uber to my accommodation, which was like literally around the block, like around the corner.
From Kempton Park?
It was, where was it? It was Brahm.
Okay.
So I was at like a city lodge or city, something like that. And it was just around the corner, and like just the whole time I was like, nah, play it down. Because I do that. I don't, like, I often brush off things that I do. Because I just have things in my head about never wanting to like be a big head about it. Like I don't want like an ego. I don't want to be gross. I don't want to like brush people off. I just want to be me. And I think that's like one of the biggest like things for me. And it's super important that I stay me regardless of how big I grow, how whatever Prime does. But yeah, that whole day, it was magical. You know, it's a kind of like a dream. You know, like, oh fuck, like we're doing this like takeover of the True Music Studios for Boiler Room and Valentine's. Like I don't think many promoters get to do something like that in their career. And like now I've already done like kind of 3 events related to that.
Folding up to the third one.
Third one, yeah. And I mean that's also like a really crazy moment for me, because you know, like, oh my god, like I have like the hooligan, I have like Julio, one of the founders, former member of like Selection, playing at one of my parties.
Educate. Tell them about who that individual is. The kids don't know. They don't really do their homework. They're just attached to the hype. Please school them, Alex. We're listening.
So, let's start off at 2015. Selection came down to Cape Town for the first time. Julio, who was still a member at the time, was like a pivotal part. One of the best selectors, and definitely one of the most pivotal like members of Selection, and killed it every time. Like the Selection's been down like 3 times, I think, 3 separate times. That first time they came down, I think they had 1 or 2 events. One was at like it was called like a sideshow or something. It was like Uppercut, who like, obviously one of my like biggest inspirations. Like they threw an event with Selection. With that as well, they had a talk at Red Bull Studios, and there was like an imprint. I don't think it was Julio who said it. It was Joe K. But like, regardless, like these guys have like inspired me like crazy. And again, this was also during a moment when I didn't even think I would throw events. So the crazy thing is that this just lay in my subconscious.
Like you mentioned earlier with your cousin.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just like, it's crazy how those things double back. And you're like, oh, like damn, like that's me. That's,
For sure.
That's that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I can never, I don't think I'll ever be able to fully comprehend this moment because it's so magical for me. Like it's this guy who played such an important role in inspiring me. He didn't even know, I didn't even know. And like here I am, like having him on one of my lineups for one of my biggest events, like, you know. And I guess it goes back to what you're saying with the purest curatorship like aspect and like standpoint, like these boiler room Valentine's backed events. I'm really enjoying being able to kind of like give it my all in terms of curatorship. And I want people to look back at these and be like, these were some of the best boiler room related events that have ever happened in Cape Town. And I think they're in strong contention for that, you know. And again, it's just the beginning. I want to do a lot more. But again, you got to start somewhere.
For
you gotta
sure.
build.
Definitely. Repoke. Yeah.
Exactly. Because again, like if you just consider yourself at your peak, will you ever get to anything bigger than that? No. So I like to think about this as just baby steps. Because I want to do a lot.
Oh man. Are we invited, bro?
Definitely invited. Pull up.
You don't know what you're starting. I might mop the floors there and get ahead of myself.
No, I mean, so long as you pull up. Yeah.
I'll definitely be there, man. I'll definitely be there. We should all be there on Friday, the 28th of May. 27th of May.
Link in bio.
Link in bio. How much are the tickets going for, and how can the people get the tickets?
It's still 80 for early bird, and then it jumps up to like 100, 150/200 depending. I think it's just because it's like a huge lineup.
For sure.
Like I've got Doo-Wop on.
Who's on the lineup? Doo-Wop, bro. Doo-Wop don't really get her flowers, bro.
Exactly. I think the last time I saw Doo-Wop was, I think maybe the first time. It was at it was like CTMF 27.
Early days.
No, it was before 2019 CTMF. I think.
Dude, she's such a powerhouse.
Yeah.
Like a gateway to so many. Man, I'll just.
But it's wild with access because like brands and stuff, they don't give. They don't give us enough here in Cape Town. So you often see people who blow up and do well in Joburg stay in Joburg. They don't come here.
Because there's no real infrastructure.
Exactly. Like nobody can pay that booking fee. No one can pay for those flights.
For sure.
But then again, like luckily, it's like the situation of this like opportunity through Boiler Room and Valentine's with their True Music Fund.
Yes.
I've luckily been able to tap in.
Well, nice.
So like, it's not forever. There's still like a set amount of events that I can do with that. But I'm trying to do the most that I can with what I have and the time available.
For sure. Yeah. Who else? It's Doo-Wop.
So it's Doo-Wop. Senora. I got Rory. I've got Burning It Up. I've got Majuki. It's like a producer. Also like quite heavy selection.
Nice.
Affiliation. And then I'm trying to think. I have more on this lineup. I'm just like, my brain is fuzzy. But yeah, it's a fire lineup. I'm excited. It's definitely one of my favorite lineups. But what I love also with what I'm doing is just like, it seems to be like consecutive favorite lineups. And I think that is also something that, it speaks to my growth, because again, like why put yourself in the box? Why say that that's your best event? Do better every time if you can.
Hey man, I can't wait to see Doo-Wop, bro. Did you know latest single isn't just episode?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Hey, how do you do it, dude? Like that is so crazy to me. But what should people expect, bro?
I think expect the unexpected, but also just like pull up knowing it's gonna be fun, because what I've noticed as well, and what I've also noticed with some big DJs who've kind of like blew up and are doing well even before that in like even the EU. Yeah. It's like people come through with a set expectation. And I think that's so bad, because how are you gonna have a good time if you have already had that good time in your head? That's like, nah. You gotta enjoy what someone's offering. And how can you do that if you've already expected that whole thing? So I think that's also like one of my biggest issues with like events and like people who come through sometimes. Like I think I'm lucky in that I've managed to create a crowd and following who
it's a cult. It's a cult.
I'll brush that aside. I'm just gonna say follow.
It's a cult, bro. It's a cult.
Fair. But it's an open-minded cult
For sure.
And I think it's great that like people come through and they do allow for a DJ to play, and like they do take it in. But again, you know, you don't always get that same crowd. And I just, that is one of my biggest issues and one of my biggest visions, regardless of how big I grow, if that is the case. I just want to constantly have a following that is open-minded so that I can still have that room to expand and like experiment on a lineup and kind of just give something that I haven't given before. Yeah.
Crazy, man. Where do you see Prime in the next 5 years, bro?
Oh, bro. I don't know. I don't think I get to think often.
That far.
Like things are happening at such a fast pace.
That you don't get to think.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I get to, like, you know, I think about my short term and I'm like, okay, cool, what am I doing then? But yeah, I don't know. I think I definitely want to throw like a Prime festival at some point.
Wow.
I'm doing merch. So I want to experiment and expand beyond just music, because I think with the fact that, you know, it's a cult. You know,
oh, he's admitted it's a cult.
I mean, I said it in lowercase.
Lowercase.
Yeah, bro. But I think there's so much more to culture than music, and as big as that music aspect is, I think there's so much more to tap into, and I'm trying to do that. Like I've started that Prime Film Society. I'm dropping the merch. I just want to like make Prime as integrated with everyone in society as I can, just to make it transcend what it is. Not even to push things. I think that keeps my enjoyment in it. And again, like if I want to do this forever, I can, but I need to make it so that it, you know, it speaks to my growth and my wanting to continuously create. Because you know, like I hate the term creative. I do sometimes. It's just like it feels like a, you know, just like a ploy, like a marketing term, like a, you know, like psychological
creative
pricing.
And content. Oh, I hate those words.
You know, like 1,999. That's 2K, bro. That's 2K.
I get you.
So yeah, as a creative, I think, you know, you have to do more. You cannot just stay the same. And that is also one of the things I had to fight with at the beginning, like with that kind of movement from free parties to charging, and like from my situation now with just throwing events to now doing merch, to doing cross-cultural communication, as it were. I think it's important that, you know, you as a person, you're an offering, and I hate that combination between almost like brand asset and humanity, but they go hand in hand now, because you know, you're a brand. Brands approach you to do things, like they want your face, they want your brand. So why hold yourself back, and then why also hold your offerings back? So I definitely think that, you know, I want to do more than just music, and even just in terms of like DJing, like I also maybe want to, like, I want to produce, I want to expand within my offering within music, but then again also do more than just music. Yeah,
man. Last but not least, bro, what's the message you have for the young up and coming DJs?
I think you got to drop the ego. I think we got to come in willing to learn, willing to improve, and you know, kind of like, as much as we all want our flowers, we need to earn them too. And I think we need to just like come in and support things we want to be a part of, versus actively expecting to be a part of them, because that's just not how it works. And I think if you support things and you come through with the right intention, it is very easy to become a part of it.
Thank you so much for that, bro. Thank you for coming today, Alex. I wanted to let you know that I'm proud of you, bro. You're doing amazing, bro. You have a very sacred responsibility in the city. I wish you 100 and plus. I wish you grace. I wish you patience. I wish you to never lose the love for for the curating, for the DJing, and for the craft at large, bro. Thank you for blessing us with your presence. Thank you for throwing some of the most memorable parties, bro. When we tally up the playing fields or the leveling fields, like we'll look back and identify so many memorable moments, bro. And if it wasn't for your contribution, I think a lot of key individuals in this creative thing that we find in Cape Town wouldn't have crossed paths or met. So outside of partying, you bringing people that are meant to be together, you know what I mean? And that's a very important virtue you carry. Thank you for everything. Thank you for gracing us with your presence, my brother.
Thank you for having me.
One love.